We are just going live. Takes around. Yeah, I think we are on go live. Could you please check live stream? Yeah, yeah, we are go live. Cool. We are just going live. Takes around.
Awesome.
Okay. Yeah. So, hi all. Thanks for joining. And this is our fifth Remix India meetup. And if you would like to speak on this meetup, I have created a form. So you just fill up the form, and then we will like schedule it for the upcoming meetup. And in this meetup, we discuss about the remix. So you can come up any topic. So we will discuss on that, and it's up to you. Like if you want to speak for 1 hour, 30 minutes, 20 minutes, it's all up to you. And yeah, so thanks Hers for joining and provide us the details. And so let me introduce Harsh Singh. Okay, so Harsh Singh is a passionate developer who enjoy learning and sharing his knowledge with people. So he enjoy writing TypeScript, React, and is interested in a wide array of framework and technologies. He currently live in New York, US, and where he's a 10th grade student. And he is a part of his school robotic and debate team and enjoy riding bicycle and playing sports when he is away from the computer. And today I had a word with him, and he explained like he's more writes a blog on technologies. So today I have checked, and he has written a lot. So yeah, thanks sir, go ahead.
Mhm. Yep. That's basically me. I have to set up something just really quickly for like my presentation. It'll just be 1 second. My bad.
Yeah, take your time.
Oh, never mind. Sorry. All right. Yeah. So can I start sharing my screen if that's
Yes, you can start.
uh, all right. You guys can see my screen, right?
Yes, yes.
All right. So I can't full screen this. All right. I guess and
Yeah,
this works. So my topic is building a serverless application using Remix with GraphQL, Prisma, and CockroachDB. So about me, my name is Harsh Singh. Anuj already introduced me earlier, but I'm a serverless fanboy, a huge database nerd, and I'm also a high school student. These are my socials and where you guys can find me across the internet. So here's everything we'll be covering. We'll be first building a GraphQL and Prisma schema, then we'll set up GraphQL for our application, so like creating queries and mutations. Then we'll set up the GraphQL code generation. Then we'll set up CockroachDB with our schema, build API routes and functions, and then in the end integrate it all into our application. So, whoops, that was the final slide. But so here is a look at our application currently. It's pretty simple. So there's this new page basically where you can write content. Currently, it doesn't do anything because the app isn't functional, and we're gonna make it functional. But so it has these authentication pages. So like sign up and then log in and then posts, and then you can create a new post. It's a pretty simple app, mainly for the proof of concept. So I think without further ado, we should get into it. So first of all, what we have to do is, let me just close this up really quickly. But first of all, we have to create a GraphQL file in our root directory. So we'll do GraphQL, and then we can do types.ps, and we'll need to install a few libraries here. So let me just pull up the names of the libraries. So we'll need to install 1 second. We'll need to install GQTX along with GraphQL. And we'll also need remix.run, which is a library for implementing GraphQL specifically inside Remix. And just notice, like throughout like the stream, you'll notice that I do like YA and Y and like YD. Those are basically just shortcuts that I have configured for my terminal. Essentially, YA is just yarn add, and like Y is just yarn. But these are just shortcuts that I have like for my terminal. But anyways, since we have that working now, if we go into our types model, we'll need to import factory from GQTX. This will basically just create types for us, which we can use to define our schema. And we'll need to import context from Remix GraphQL, and make sure it's from index.server, because it generally complains if it's not from there. But then let's do const types is equal to create types factory, pass in our context here, and then we'll just export this as default. Awesome. So next, let's create a new app inside of here. I mean, a new file, and it'll be in the schema directory. So schema/post.typescript. Actually, I think we should start with the user model first. So we can just hit F2 to rename, and then user.ts. So here, first, let's take a look at our Prisma schema. So here we have two models. We have our user model and our post models, and they're representative of like models in our database. And for our database, we're using CockroachDB, by the way. We'll get on to like configuring that later, but right now we have two models, the user and the post. And to generate like definitions, you guys can just do yarn generate, yarn Prisma generate, and then to migrate all of this like information into your database, you guys can do yarn Prisma migrate dev, or deploy if you're in like production environments. But since we're in a dev environment, we'll just do dev. But I've already done it. I can do it again. So yarn Prisma dev. It basically just does the usual. And it's already in sync, so we don't need any changes. However, if you're starting from scratch, you'll probably need to do that. So these are the two models we have. So if we go back into our GraphQL schema, we'll have to import this user type from our Prisma client, and we'll also have to import the types which we just created. So first, let's define the user type. So export const user type is equal to types.object type, and then we'll pass in the user object created by Prisma. We'll name this user, and then for fields, essentially it'll have the ID and the username field. So types.field, and then name, ID, types.non-null, and then this should be types.id. And then here, types.field, name, username, type, non-null, string. So essentially, we created a user type with the types of ID and username. So next, let's do so this is going to be our login type enum. So we'll have login equal to login, and then register equal to register. So this will basically, since we'll only have one mutation to log in and to create accounts, this will basically help us distinguish what we're doing. Now, so next we'll do export const login type equal to types dot enum type name login type values, and then this will essentially be the same thing as as the enum we just defined there. Awesome. So we have two different individual types defined now. So next we'll move on to the errors that we have for our like individual fields. So let's do type login field errors equal to, and then so instead of here we'll need the username, which is optional. So username string, and then password, which will also be a string. Then we'll need login field errors type is equal to types dot type. And then we'll pass in the login field errors object, which we just created here. And let's just call this login field errors and fields. And actually, we need to make this. So here, essentially the same thing, types.field, and then we'll call this username, and then type would be types.string, and it can be null. That's why I didn't do the non-null. And for resolve here, so username, and this will basically just return the username. So let's do the same thing for password. Just copy this down here. Password. And just return the password. So we got the login field errors type. Now the last type that we need to define is the login result type. So so first we'll need the type. So the login type, the user's username, the user's password, which will also be a string. Then we'll need type, and then pass this in again. And then name the login. So here, essentially, we'll need all of the same things that we had defined above. So types.field, and then name would be login type. Type would be types.non-null, types.string, and all of these objects here are a string, I believe. So I think we can just copy all of them eventually and just change this to username, password, and yeah, so So what's the error here is that I made a mistake here. I had to use these. But yeah, so this will be the type of login fields that the user needs to input when they're creating their when they're logging in. Next we'll do export type. This will be the type which is returned when the user logs in. So export type, login results type, and actually no, export const. Object type. So here we'll have the form error. If there was an error creating the form, then we'll have field errors, and we'll have the fields, which will be the field errors. And actually, this wouldn't be a string. This would be login field errors too. So actually, and then this would be login fields. Oh, all right, awesome. So we'll call this login results, and for the fields, let's just do for the fields type stuff. Field name, form error as we had above, type string, and then so for the resolve function, we'll have here form error, and then this basically returns form error. So let's just copy this over. We'll need it more. So so instead of form error here, let's switch this to field errors. And so for the type here, instead of type string, we can do login field errors, and we can change this to field errors and return field errors. And the same thing here. Instead of form error, we'll do fields, type login fields type, and then fields, and then we'll just return fields. So we have our entire user, excuse me, we kind of have our entire user model defined here. So now that we have our user model defined, let's define our post model. So if we go onto our Prisma schema, you can see we have a second model here, post, which has a relation with user. So it only made chronological sense to first start with user and then move on to post. So let's move on to post now. Let's start by importing, import type post and user from Prisma client, and then let's import the user type, which we just created in the user file. Then let's import the actual type definitions that we have to create all of our different files. So export const post type, equal to types.object type. Inside of here, we'll do post, and inside of here, the user object in the post will be of type user. Now, for the name, we'll just name it post fields as usual. So the different fields that we had in our Prisma schema. So let's open that up really quickly. So name, content, user, stuff like that. So we'll just do types.field, name, ID, type, types.non-null, here, and then this will be of type ID. Here's a field. This will be called name, so the name of the post essentially. And content. So, and here are all the different fields in the post object. For the user, we passed in the user type, which we had actually defined in our other file. So next, well, with our post, we have a create post mutation. So similar to our like login mutation, let's create a type for errors on this create post. So type create post field errors, name, string, and then content would also be string. Export const create post field errors type types.object type, and then here just put errors, and then here we'll just name this create post field errors, and then
Hey, Harsh, we have only
fields
20
will be
minutes. If you have written just
field
hello, Harsh.
name. The name of this would be name because that's the name of the post. Type would be types.string, and then so for resolve, essentially we just want to return this name. So I can just call it and return it like that, and then we'll have to do something similar for the content. So content type string, and then resolve would be content, and just return it. All right, we have this type created, so let's move on to the create post. So type
Hey,
create
Harsh.
post
Hello, am I
fields.
audible?
Put a
Harsh,
name.
am I audible?
This is string content, also string, and export const create post fields type types.object type, and here it'll be create post fields. So inside of here we'll do name create post fields, and then field name type would be types.non-null, and then types.string. So this represents the string in our create post, and then the second one will represent, let's rename this, the second one will represent content. So these are the two types that we have defined so far. Let's move on to the result. So type create post result, field errors would be create post field errors, then fields would be create post fields as we have already, and then the post would be of type post, and inside the post the user would be of type user. All right, now that we have all of that, we would do export const create post result type, and then we'd set this to type, and then pass in the create post result, and inside of here we'd name this create post result, And then for the fields, we do field name, field errors, type, create post field errors type, and then resolve errors. Just basically returning the field errors. So type.field name. This one would be fields. Type would be create post fields type. Resolve would be field error, or resolve would be fields, and return fields. And then types dot field. This one would be name post. I'll just do a lowercase p. So post type would be post type that we have defined above. Resolve, and then here we'll just do post that returns a post. So now we're finished with both of our models. We're finished with our post and our user model, which is a huge step forward. So next, what we'll do is we want to actually create a index.ps file, and here we'll actually implement the mutations and sort of other stuff that we need to actually build our schema. So we kind of just did the boring work, and now we're moving on to some of the fun stuff. So import build GraphQL schema. This is a function we use to generate our GraphQL schema. Then we'll import our database from our database server component. Then that's basically it for now. Let's start. So these are the queries. So types.query. Oh, we also need our types. So types.query type. And here fields would be types.field. So this particular one, the name of this would be me, and it's basically the current authenticated user. So type would be user type, resolve async. Then here are the parameters, so args, and then the context. And then so essentially what we'll do in this resolve function here is, since it's me, that's the name of the function. What we'll do is we'll just basically get the current authenticated user from the request. So as you guys can see, ctx.request. So this will basically just get the current authenticated user, as I mentioned. So type.field. And next one would be name posts. Then, and by the way, there's this description. There's a description parameter here too, or if you guys need to describe any of this. I personally am not going to use it, but if you guys want to, feel free to. But here, the type here would be not null. Types.list, since it's multiple results, and then types.non-null again, and then post type. Awesome. So types here, and then so for our args, this is basically the arguments that the user will pass into our schema. So we'll have a take, which is type.arg, types.int, and then we'll have a skip. So types.arg, types.int, and essentially this will let our Prisma schema kind of know how many posts to take and which ones to skip and stuff like that. So args, then resolve, we'll make this async, and we'll just do db.post.findMany, and then inside of here we'll include the user. So this basically means that the user comes like so basically in SQL there's a join where you can join two tables, and if when we do include user is equal to true, we get the associated user of this post. And yeah, that's basically all. I'll just include the parent parameter here, types.field. So next, let's see, next we have post, which returns a single post. So the query for that, name post, types would be, the type would be types.non-null post type. Or actually no, it'll just be a normal post type. And then for arguments here, we would need the ID, which would be, so the ID non-null input, and this would be types of ID. And then resolve, so this and our arguments, and then db.post.findUnique, since we're finding a specific user, and then where ID is the same as args. Oops. I misspelled it here. So where the ID is the same as args.id, and we also want to include the user. So include user is equal to true. And these are all the queries that we'll need for our app. And let's move on to mutations now. So basically the query in REST, and like the REST API perspective, queries basically get, and like mutations are basically posts. That's a very like rough example of it, but that's one way to think about it. So next we have our mutations. So types dot mutation type, fields, and then here we have types dot field. So our first mutation will be for logging in. So name, login, args, login type, arg, input, login puts type, and then username. This would be args. Username would be types.org, and then null input, and types.string. And I promise we'll get into the fun part later. We just kind of have to do this before we move on to like anything else. So password. This is basically the user's password, as we already know. Types.org, types.non-null input, types.string. All right, so we have all of our arguments defined. Now we'll just give this the type of login results type, and then resolve should be async, args, and our context. So here on field errors, so, and we defined all of this earlier. You guys probably remember, like our field errors and stuff. So username is equal to validate username. So validate username is a function that we have in our utils. It's in our validators file, but it basically validates a username and returns errors if there's like anything wrong with it. So validate username, args.username, and then password, validate password, args.password. And that's it for the field errors. So const fields would be login type args.login type, username args.username, and then password would be args.password. So these are all the fields that we have. So we need to first check if there are any errors. So if object.values field errors, some boolean, then this basically says we have errors. So we'll return field errors and we'll return our fields. So next we'll create a switch statement for the different login scenarios. So case login type login. So if this is like a regular login, so to say, then the const user would be and login's already a function that we have which handles like JW all the session and like tokens and stuff, so we don't have to worry about it since our since my workshop kind of is on GraphQL specifically. So login username would be args.username, then password would be args.password. And then here, if there is no user object, then we'll just return fields, and then we'll return an error for incorrect credentials. So, and then we'll do ctx.redirect. What is this? Sorry, ctx.redirect, and here we'll set cookie into await create user session user.id. All right. So this will basically redirect our user to where all of the posts are, and then it'll return the fields of this. So now that we have that, let's move on to if the user were to register. So let's do case login type dot register. So first we actually need to check if the user exists already. So const exists is equal to await.db.user.find_unique, and we need to find one where the username is the same as the username provided in the args in the arguments. So if exists, then return the fields and the form error user already exists. And if they don't exist, then we'll do const new user is equal to wait register, which is already another function that we have defined. Username, password would be password, and ctx.redirect. Here, and then we'll set the cookie here to. We'll actually create a user session here, and then we'll input in the new user's ID. And what's the error here, which is possibly undefined? So they're saying redirect might be possibly undefined. Just add a quick undefined check, and then at the end we'll just return our fields. So yeah, I believe that's everything we have for this switch statement. So, and that basically handles logging in and logging out for us. But we still have more types to create. I know it gets a bit overwhelming at times, but so types.field. This one will be for creating posts, and I promise this is the last type we'll create. But so this is for creating posts.
Hello.
The
Am
arguments
I
here
audible?
will be the name. So type.r input string, and content would be types.mark input types.string. All right, and this would be of type create post result type resolve, so it would be async context, and yep, so const user ID. Wait, now we need to create a new function here which basically gets the user ID for us. So if we go up, if we go into the session.server here, we can essentially use this kind of as a place to create this method, which basically gets like the users. It basically gets the like user ID from the session. So let's do export const require user ID to be async, and then we can input in our context. For this, remix GraphQL index.server, or else it like complains. I'm not sure why, but it just does. So const session would be, we'll first get the user session. So we get session, we get user session, request, then const ID would be session get user ID. So if there's no ID, or if type of ID, so if ID isn't present, or if it's not of type string, then redirect sign up, and then it'll throw a new GraphQL error here, and we can just do unauthorized, and then here nodes. So there's a bunch of fields which go into this. If I hover over it, GraphQL error options. So most of them, we don't need to put anything in for most of them, so we can just do undefined. But yeah, if you guys would like, you guys can play around with the documentation at your own pace, as per your needs. Undefined, original error. This would also be undefined, and then extensions is where we'd put the unauthorized, and then the status, which is 401 for unauthorized, if I'm not wrong. But yeah, so now that we have our require user ID function, we can actually go down, and here we can do await required user ID, and then we can pass in our context for creating the user ID. So cool stuff. So const field errors here would be name, validate, post name, args.name, and then next we have what's name, and then content. This would be validate post content, content, and yeah, const fields. So the fields here, const fields name, name, and then the content content. And so we need to check again, like we did above, if object dot values field errors some boolean. So if there's basically field errors, then what we'll do is we'll just return field errors and then our fields. Awesome. Now let's do const post, and we'll do await db.post.create. We don't have any like built-in functions for this because it's pretty simple. I mean, here, so we'll use a spread operator here. I'm assuming you're already familiar with what a spread operator is, but we'll just use a spread operator here for the contents, and user ID would be user ID, and then include user true, so we can also get the user model with all of this. We have an error here. Void is not assignable to. Does this not return anything? I'm confused. Void. Oh right, we completely forgot. We need to return this ID at the end. All right, so now we shouldn't have the error anymore. And so now after someone creates the post, we just want to redirect them to their post. So it would be posts and then post.id, I believe, and then we have that undefined error here. So we would just redirect them, and then we would return post, and I believe we're done with everything now. Fields, because it does not. What's this? This is strange. Oh, it just went away. I guess it was some weird error. But now we can finally export our schema as build GraphQL schema into this function, and then query, and then so export our queries and mutations. And I don't know what's up with this error, honestly, but it feels like it just keeps coming and going. I'm unsure, but I don't think it's anything significant. So now that we have that, we need to create a file in our GraphQL. This is the last file, I promised. Introspection. It's called introspection.ts, and essentially it's for GraphQL Coding. So we'll import fs from fs and import introspection from schema. This is from GraphQL. Import path from path. Import our schema from the schema file. Write file sync. And basically write the file, as you guys probably already know. JSON. Alright, this basically generates a JSON file sort of with our schema, like introspection. So now that we have all of that, we would need to write our Coding file, but I've already written it for us because who writes YAML, honestly? But so here essentially we have a few options for GraphQL Coding. Here's the path of our schema, the documents, and what it generates, and then some plugins. So we have TypeScript and TypeScript operations. And if we go into our package.json, we can actually see that we have all of these like TypeScript and TypeScript operations. Awesome. So we have all of that ready. So let's get into our actual application finally and start building some stuff, because I'm kind of tired of defining models and types. So let's do GraphQL.ts. We would need to make this tsx. So import, here we would import custom context from remix GraphQL, limit import derive function, get action function, and then get loader function from remix GraphQL, and then we'd need index.server because, as we know, it like normally complains if we don't. Then we would import our schema from our GraphQL schema, and then const has status. Here we have an error field, which we can just set to any for now, and then error is status number, and then here we can just return boolean. We can return error as a boolean, like if there's an error or not. If error is equal to object and end status equals to number. So as status, then status code, and this is basic boilerplate which came with remix GraphQL. Status code function, that's the type, should be result bot status result.errors. Extensions. Status. And then error dot extensions dot status. We have boolean is not assignable to type GraphQL error. What's this? Oh, I see. So essentially, put that in a bit of a wrong spot. Max status. So where were we? Then we'd just do default status. So type number. Let's check out this error really quickly. Actually, I think this goes here. That's your math.max. I don't know. Generally, this file is it's generated by default. I think I may have, so in the GitHub repository for this, I believe I already, like, since I already did all of this, I already have the file here by default, so I'll just copy it over. GraphQL. Basically, this file, this file was supposed to be automatically, like in like the documentation for this. Essentially, this file is like already present, and you were supposed to copy it over. So I guess it's the same thing. But inside of here, let's first go into our index route. And inside of our index route, we need to first make sure that we actually do get all of our posts. So let's make a const posts query, and then inside of here, we can write our query. So query posts. And actually, a tip here is if you guys want syntax highlighting for GraphQL, if we just write GraphQL right here, we'll get syntax highlighting inside of our code blocks, which is pretty cool. I think you need the GraphQL extension for this though, but yeah. So posts, and then we want to take like the first 20 ID, name, and then the content of the post are all the different fields that we want back. So yeah, then let's export the loader. So export const loader would be, and this is of type loader function, and we'll pass in our arguments here, and then process request with GraphQL, our args, schema, and then our query, which would be posts query. And for our schema, let's just import it from our file. So now that we have that, if we go into our package.json, I already had some predefined scripts based upon GraphQL Coding, which basically what they do is they generate types based upon the like different models that we have defined in our routes. So if we open this, let me just make this a bit larger. If we open this and just make this if we make this y cogen, so it basically parses everything. So yeah, basically parses everything, and now we have types which we can use. So const loader data is equal to use loader data, which is a function from Remix, by the way. But essentially what this does, and then inside of here, we'll have the data and then posts query. All right, so now that we have our different data, what we need to do is we need to kind of map out all of our data. So we have our div here, and so loader data dot data posts dot map, then post, and then the index of the post. So inside of here, what we'll do is we'll have a div, then key index, class name would be margin y20, just give it some margin. A href here, we would make this posts and then post.id, so the ID of our post, and then here we would make this the name of our post. And for the class name, we would just do font bold, text 3 XL, make it decently big. And then so for our paragraph element here, we do post.content, and I want to kind of make this content shorter, so I'll do dot substring. So it'll just basically be the first 300 characters of the kind of our like content that we have in our post, so to say. And then so there's built-in truncation into CSS, but that doesn't really work with like heights. So what I'm checking here, I'll check if the length is larger than 300, and if it is, then we'll just add these 3 dots, and if it's not, then we don't really need to add anything. But now that we have that, we have an error here, which is use the index.server, as I said, kind of important. But now you guys can see in our application, GraphQL does in fact actually work, which is really good news. Let's style this a bit better. So we can do read more here, and then for this paragraph, I'll just give it some padding, and then awesome. So this is basically our home screen, and we can just go here and click on posts. So if we want to click on a post, we need to go into the post ID route. So next, let's go into post ID, and let's make this post ID route quickly. So const posts query, and then make sure we get the GraphQL syntax highlighting. So query post, and then post ID would be type ID. I hope this GraphQL auto formats. I'm not used to like formatting content myself at all. Pretty bad habit, but it's whatever. So post ID instead of here, and name content, and then the user, and then we'd get the user's ID. So this is all the content that we need. And actually, I don't think we need the user's ID. I think what we have right now is enough. So now we'd also run a loader function as we did. So export const loader would be a loader function async our arguments process request with GraphQL args, our schema, our query, which would be the post query that we defined, and our schema is something that we already have. Awesome. So process request with GraphQL. Now, as I said last time, we can do and just, but as I said last time, we have to generate our code. So we can do y codegen to generate like our like configuration and stuff. So we already have that generated successfully. So let's just do const loader data, would be use loader data, and then inside of your data post query, which is the thing that we just generated, and actually data could be undefined, so I'll do that. And then yeah, so const post would be loader data dot post. So if there's no post, then we'll return our not found component, which is something that I've already created before. And then if we do have something, instead of the h1 here, we just do post.name, and then for the content, we just do post.content. So if we refresh it here, and let's say we click read more on one of these posts, we can see that we have some content written here for the post, and we can go back and yeah, so posts and stuff, that stuff works now, which is great news. Now, before I wrap it up, the final thing that we're gonna do is make sure our login and sign up works. And this is a pretty straightforward process too. I'll first work on the sign up specifically, and excuse me, I have to change this import really quickly. So, all right. Import from remix. So const login mutation would be here, GraphQL, and then mutation login. So our login type which would be of type login type. Our username would be of type string. Our password, which would also be of type string. And then login type would be login type. Username would be of type username. And then password would be. Okay, so fields here, login type, username, password. Field errors here would be username, password, and then we would have the form error in case there was a form error. And so here we need instead of a action, we need instead of a loader, we actually need an action because we'll post to this route. So export const action, so you go to action function, and then to be args process request with GraphQL. Args query would be the login mutation, and then our schema, which we need to import. So I'll just import it. Awesome. So this is for action. We also need to check if the user is already authenticated, so they can't come on the route again, and just view the route. So export const loader. This would be of type loader function, and then async args. So here we'd check if object keys. We'd actually need to get the user session. So check if there's a session request. So check if there's a session already, and we don't need to wait here. But check if there's a session already in progress, and check if basically the data.length is not equal to 0, and then return a redirect in case it is. So I think data.length, I believe. Data.length. If it's not equal to 0, all right, no more errors left. And we can't return, we need to return something from this, so from our loader function. So I'll just return null, because we're not returning like a proper value. So inside of here now, basically we have almost everything we need. We have a form component here, which is shared both between the sign up and the login forms. So if we go to our form component, what we need is we need to import our login mutation. Actually, first we need a code gen to get our mutation. So let's import login mutation now, which works perfectly. Inside of here, what we can do is const action data. This would be use action data, and then this would be the data from the login mutation that we have. And then const form error would be action data dot data login dot form error, and let's just copy paste this down a few times. Form error. This would be field errors, and then this last one would be fields. So field errors, And all right, we basically have everything. So if we can try actually. So for our action data mainly, the main thing that it serves to do is to it kind of gets us like it kind of tells us like if there's been an error and stuff with our form, and for like accessibility and stuff. So area described by, for this, if there's an error, we can just check form error, form error message, not then undefined. And we'll copy this because we might need it a few times here and there. So we have that. So for the username part here, default value, we can set this to default value. We can set this to fields username, and area invalid would be boolean. So this is basically for like accessibility and stuff, for people who are like blind and like need screen readers and stuff. So form error message, but I think if we have a form error here, actually no, we check field errors dot username, and if we have that, then we do like username error. But yeah, that's basically it for that. Let's copy paste that down here, change that from username to password here, dot password error password. And so we have all of that working just fine. At the bottom, what we can do is we can do form error. So if there's a form error, then let's just put in a little like warning sign with the form error. Row would be alert. So just a little like warning sign with the form error if like a form error is present. So now if we go into sign up, actually we can't go into sign up because of the new function we built. So what we can do is we can create a new private tab here. And if we go here, if we go to new, you'll see it redirects us to this new post, because it basically checks if we're authenticated or not. And if we're not authenticated, it redirects us to, actually it will redirect us, my bad. It doesn't redirect us yet, but it will redirect us later. But for sign up here, basically we can, let's do /sing1 any random password. So if we do sign up, woo, so it authenticates us, which is amazing. It's exactly what we wanted. So we have our last route here remaining. Actually, we need we have similar logic for the login here. So I think we can just copy all of this here, since they're using the same like basic mutation. It's no big deal. Function. Okay, user session, loader function, redirect, and yeah, so I think I can just copy this up top here, and that works. And then we need to bring in our schema too. So import schema from GraphQL schema. All right, so our login route works too. Now we have one final route, and then our whole application is basically finished. And that route is for creating a new post. So here we would have a const create post query, and then this would be GraphQL here, query create post user. And then we'd have another one with create post mutation, and then this would be GraphQL. So this one would be a mutation, and it's called create post. The arguments we have here are the name, the string, content, which is also a string, and then create post here. Name would be name, content, pass down the props, fields, name, content, then field errors, name, content, and the post, so the ID of the post. And awesome, so here we also need an action function here to export const action. This would be action function args process request with GraphQL here, args schema query create post mutation here, and I need to import this up top really quickly. So what's it called? Schema, right? Schema. Imported my schema. And we also need a loader function here with basically the same thing that we had in like login. So I'll just come over here and copy it. Basically, we like need to check here if there's a session or not, and get user session. So if there is a session, actually, so if there isn't a session, what we'll do is we'll redirect the user to sign up, and we actually need to change this null to process request with GraphQL args schema query create post query. And create post query basically just gets the user to ensure that they can actually create the post. But other than that, we can do yCodeGen and oops, what do we have here? Generate, create. Yep. I think I spelled it wrong in my. I think I spelled it wrong in my schema. So GraphQL index create posts should be of type create post. All right. I think that's everything. Let's try again. CodeGen. Awesome. So that works. Now, as usual, we need like the action data stuff. So const action data is equal to use action data. Data create post mutation. Actually, create post. So let's check again. Yes, let's check here. Right. I think I need a. I don't know why automatic imports aren't working. Or from QL create post mutation. So data should be of type create post mutation. I think I probably know why it wasn't working. I type really fast and I get like a bunch of these typos. But so action data should be create post mutation, and then we also need to make sure that we have errors accounted for here. So errors, GraphQL error, and then we can set this type to that of an array. Const fields is equal to action data dot data post dot fields, and then const field errors equal to action data dot data dot post dot field errors. All right. We have all of that done. We have our form here, and our input, we'd basically do the same thing that we did in this form. I'll come over here and I'll copy paste it. Default value fields dot name then name error, and then I'll do the same thing here for accessibility. Content, and I think everything should work now. If we go back here, can't import from remix GraphQL. Where's that at? Have I imported it wrong somewhere? Try. This GraphQL. Oh, it's in my login route. It told me up there. Index.server. All right. Now, if we refresh it, if we go to new post, you can see it allows us to create a new post. However, if I put in the same URL, if I like go back and click on new post here, it redirects us to sign up because we're not authenticated. If we do something here, let's just do another example post like from Meetup. Get publish post. It redirects us, and our app is basically complete. So let me switch back over to Anuj, and I think we went on for a bit longer than we originally expected, but
Yeah, it's too
I
late
think
around.
I don't think it's a big deal. I hope everyone enjoyed. We basically we did a lot of stuff. We built complete like GraphQL like all complete GraphQL functions for our application, which featured which featured like quite a wide like variety of stuff, so, like authentication, and yeah, that's basically what we did today. So if you guys do have any questions,
Yeah. Hi,
yeah, thank you.
Hers.
I hope this tutorial helped you build your like remix applications with GraphQL and Prisma. If you do have any questions, feel free to ask them now. But yeah, that's basically all that I had.
Hi, am I audible? Hello, Hers. Hello, Hers. Am I
Sorry,
audible?
my speakers weren't on. I couldn't hear what you said.
Uh, am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible. So
Okay,
sorry,
okay.
it was on my bad. I
Yeah,
didn't
that's
have my
fine. That's
speakers on.
fine. Actually, I just want to remind you we are out of time, but that is fine. Like
Hmm.
you have explained a lot of things,
Hmm.
how the database working and how the GraphQL and integration with the remix and the UI and full app is working fine. Yeah,
Hmm.
thanks a lot for all the details, and
Hmm.
mostly it will helps the other people's also. So, have
Yep,
you
for
written
sure.
any blog for on this? Because it may be helpful for other people.
Hmm. I'm actually planning to write a blog on this. If I when this goes up on your YouTube channel, if
Hmm.
I do have a blog, then I'm for sure gonna plan something soon. I have my exams like
Yeah, that's fine.
in in recent time, but if I am planning to do something soon,
Cool.
if when your YouTube video goes up, for sure I'll have something ready.
Yeah, that's fine. Just give me, and then I will add in the my YouTube channel, or also in the same remix
Mm-hmm,
event also. So somebody in the like in future will check it, then he will get the link,
mm-hmm,
blog link.
mm-hmm,
And I think means how the remix is powerful means we are writing directly the database queries in the component, right? So
mm-hmm,
it's very
mm-hmm.
powerful. Like that's why
Yep,
I
yep.
like the remix.
Yeah.
And I just want to know, like, from where you get this knowledge of database. Like, you have very detailed knowledge. And
So it's kind of like my dad also worked with databases too, and it's kind of like we kind of it's like inner curiosity. I started following with like databases and stuff from a young age with like SQL and stuff. Um, but other than that, I would say a large portion of it is definitely attributed to my dad, and then I like I've used like a ton of databases, a wide like variety of databases in my applications, but excuse me, I'd say that I'd say that yeah, I just really enjoy the process of like picking out databases and learning more about databases, learning their like internals and their structure, and learning about different kinds of databases. So like NoSQL, or recently I'm reading more on distributed structure with CockroachDB. So yeah.
that's a cool thing.
Mm.
Could you please suggest any resources like from where you learn these things so that it may be helpful for our viewer?
For resources, I'd say mainly personally I am like a person who reads through documentation if I want to learn anything new. But if for resources, I'd just say like read the documentation in my opinion, because oftentimes when I was starting out, I used to search for tutorials on YouTube, and when in tutorials generally you'll find people only doing something a specific way, and even in my like talk today I did something in my specific way, but I'd say everybody has their own coding styles and everyone has their own way of doing things, and for you to actually develop that, I'd say it's important that you just start doing things on your own, like creating documentation and stuff. And I feel like these tutorials kind of become like a crutch for you, and after the like crutches are removed, it feels a person like starts to feel uncomfortable. So I'd say that go out of your comfort zone, read more documentation, and sort of like in it's like in a progression to escape sort of like this tutorial hell, and like this, so it's kind of different, it's kind of complicated the way I'd word this personally. Like your videos are amazing, you explain like a certain concept a lot of the times, so I think those videos are really good, but the like videos where they show you how to like implement like Google Auth in like React or something, things like that, I'd say it's better that you start like reading documentation, because you're going through documentation and learning from your own is a really important and a really valuable skill to have, in my opinion.
Okay, so like you suggest to the viewer, don't go shortcut. Always read documentation and don't like just take a tutorials and don't study the documents. Actual
Hmm.
things means
Hmm.
it's always the best
Yeah.
practice. Firstly, read the documentation, maybe watch some tutorials, and then start working on that.
Hmm. Hmm.
Right?
Yeah. I'd say honestly, for me, following a tutorial now is harder than like doing documentation. Than like following through the documentation. It's just a like habit, I'd say, oftentimes.
Cool. Okay. So, do you have any question? Like anybody have any question? I think we are good. Uh, these things in my mind. That's why I asked you. Cool. Thanks a lot for your time, and we have already live stream it. So if anybody want to watch the video, so like they can directly go to the my YouTube channel and just check the video, and I will also share the link with you, so you can also share with your friends so that they also watch if they don't get the time.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot for your time, and
Mm-hmm.
we have already live stream it. So if anybody want to watch the video, so okay, man. Thank
Mm-hmm.
you.
Mm-hmm.
Bye bye.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for this
Bye bye.
opportunity. See you. Bye.
Bye bye.